Hello guys, so far what we have done is classified as time response analysis. So we started by defining transfer function, we saw how the step response of system looked like, we characterized things like overshoot, settling time, we also characterized various errors like position error, velocity error, acceleration error and so on. Later on we use some algebraic method to compute if the system is stable or not, whether or not certain pole or all the poles lie on the left half or say some point of -1, because if I reduce stability then we had the root locus criteria where we had a graphical technique to see how the roots of closed loop system change as the gain k was increased from 0 to infinity. So we have not done any design problem so far, but what we have learned throughout the root locus technique is that I can guess and I can predict accurately the behavior of closed loop by just looking at open loop behavior. So when I do the root locus, I just need to know what is G and H, right? And then I can just tell you how my closed loop system would behave based on change in K from 0 to infinity. I also saw example where after a while we keep on increasing K, the system becomes unstable and so on. So what we will do today is look at the other part of the analysis, which is frequency analysis, frequency domain analysis. So to see what happened to a system or how the system responds to input of different frequency. So let us do a little bit of introduction before we actually go to more deeper analysis. So I start with the usual system, which are linear time invariant system, right? So the frequency response of system is steady state. Now this is important. The steady state response of a system towards sinusoidal input signal, and I will tell you why we are only interested in steady state response. So the reason why we study these kind of sinusoidal output is if I give or pass a signal through this LTI system, if my signal is sinusoidal, the output is also sinusoidal. Of course, what will change is its magnitude, and there will be also a bit of phase shift depending on what is sitting inside my system. So we will exactly characterize how B will change based on what is sitting inside here, and similarly how phi will change based on what is sitting inside here. Okay, so why do we need to do all this analysis? So the most of this analysis, or what we also we call also as frequency response, is independent in a way of amplitude and phase of test signal. So we will see why that is true, and then I go to design a certain system. So the design and parameters adjustment of closed loop can be carried out equally or rather easily in frequency domain than in time domain. So far we haven't looked at design problems, but this will be obvious when we start handling design problem in coming lectures. We also saw what is the effect of noise and disturbance parameters in terms of frequency. So when we are talking about sensitivity and complementary sensitivity function, we classify disturbances as low frequency signals and noise as high frequency signal. Now we will see how we can actually kill the effect of noise in a certain setting, right? So the effect of noise and disturbance parameter can be easily visualized, and then of course there will be always a correlation between time domain and frequency domain specification, which we will derive shortly. So given you know certain performance specification in time domain, I can actually even translate it into frequency domain. And another thing what I could could also do is, if I could not know how my transfer function of system look like, I can just give it a certain signals of varying frequency, and based on those frequency response I can easily estimate what is the transfer function of system is. So you may also say, well, why not just look at the system response, a step response of system, and get the transfer function, because step response include zeta and omega n, and it could measure peak value, rise time, settling times, and bunch of other things, and based on these things I could get my transfer function. Then what is the problem? Well, one drawback over here is that we just analyze second order system, right? Sometimes it might be little cumbersome to even compute those things, okay, these things zeta and omega n. What if the system is over damped, right? So what if the system is, how do I find out if it is actually critically damped or it is not? There could be some difficulty, right, in just looking at step response and looking at and then estimating the transfer function based on that, the frequency response analysis, or just looking how the frequency or how the system magnitude and phase I'm using these terms without defining them. But it will be clear in next couple of slides that how the magnitude and the phase of system change, magnitude and phase of system change with different frequency, and I just do a plot of that, and I can get very good estimate of how the transfer function looks like. Not only that, I could even look at what could be the error constant, right? We will see that slowly as we progress through the remaining of this lecture. As simple example, let us start with LTI system. Where I have usual things at the system, some transfer function. I have an input signal which is sinusoidal of this form. Okay, and I will just be interested in how my YT or output will change, or we can say CT, whatever name you are giving, will change. So the steady state response of a stable, well, this guy is important, right? The system is, if the system is unstable, then I don't really need to do any kind of analysis. The steady state response of a stable LTI system to a sinusoidal input do not depend on initial condition. Therefore, we just assume that the initial conditions are 0, and we will also see why this is true. If I just take a signal of this form, and I know that for that Laplace transform will be AW by S square plus omega square. It's omega. So this was just the Laplace transform of my input. The output now becomes, I will substitute this in this equation. So this is my output, A omega by S square plus omega square GS, my transfer function of a system. Okay. So now what I know, I can just do all the partial fraction expansion and all those things which I have do to get how the time response of system or how the solution of CS look like in time domain. I get something like this, right? So why do I call this as transient response? This is my steady state response. This is my transient response. So the question is why I call this as transient response. Essentially because these guys will be considered. We'll have terms like k1 e to the power minus t, and depending upon where the location of poles are, it could be k2 e to the power minus 2t and so on. There could be also, if some repetitive roots, then it will have a term like t k3 e to the power minus 2t, but I know that this terms will goes to 0 as time will goes to infinity, so this will be 0, and therefore I can just looking at steady state. As time approaches, transient will be 0, so I'm just looking at steady state response because t went to infinity, t is approaching to infinity, this entire thing will goes to 0. Therefore I also said that I'm interested in stable system. If system is unstable, it would means that there is a pole on right half plane, and that could be something like k4 e to the power 6t, and you know this guy actually blew up to infinity as time goes to infinity, right? Therefore there would be nothing left to analyze, right? So these guys go away. Okay, so the output contain, of course, transient term and steady state term. Now at steady state, these guys die down, and what is remaining is effect of only these terms. Only effect of these terms will be there, right? So these are the essentially due to the input, right? This guy, okay, this guy. So now what is the response of steady state when input is sinusoidal? If you look at the earlier analysis and step response, even though we had oscillations in the system, those oscillations were dying down, right? So if I just take an undamped system, we had response which was like this to a step response. See, there will be still oscillations, but they are actually going to die out, right? So there you had terms like e to the power minus t, cos omega t, and so on, right? So even though whatever frequency we had, the oscillation just die out, and whatever remains after these things go away is this guy. Okay. So for a stable system, the transient component die out while the steady state component exists forever. Let's look at how the response look like. It is CSS. At the end I am calling SS because of steady state is equals to k by s plus j omega plus k star by s minus j omega. I just use simple tricks for what I learned in Laplace transform of how to find out these constant k and k dash star. They turn out to be something like this, okay, without this, right? And k dash would be this guy. I do not really need to teach you how to compute these. These are extremely straightforward things, right? And then I take the inverse Laplace transform. Well, these are all kind of easy to compute, and then I get the result. I do all the computations, and then I get this. You know, this is important, right? So the response is B sine omega t plus phi, where input what was, how did our input look like as A sine omega t. And now this a sine omega t is transferred into b sine omega t plus phi. So what does this b, or where does this b come from? Well, b is simply b is equals to a magnitude of transfer function, right? So the system which you are passing the sinusoid through. Similarly, phi is the angle of this guy. I could just even compute it, just the angle of this guy, g omega. So phi is just the angle of g omega, and we know that g is a complex number, so we can easily compute the angle. Okay, what is important to notice here is I use the word sinusoidal transfer function, right, which is essentially substituting s is equals to j omega, because I am only interested now in steady state things. Only frequency components are remaining. So though I can just ignore the real component, right? I'm just looking at this guy s is equals to j omega. Therefore I can just take transfer function, substitute s is equals to j omega, and call it sinusoidal transfer function, and that will be helpful in entire frequency domain analysis, right? So this is little important, this is little simple trick also. Okay, so this is again some basic complex analysis. So what is conclusion or the first observation here? I pass a signal a sine omega t through a transfer function gs, okay, through a transfer function gs. What I see in the output, that I have a different magnitude, and I still have a sinusoidal but with a little phase shift, and the magnitude is the magnitude of original signal multiplied with the magnitude of transfer function. Now I can also know why I only take j omega, and then of course the phi is the result of something like this, right? So let's do a very simple example to see what this actually means. So let's say I have a GS, this is GS, okay. I have RT or RS, whatever we call it. Then I'm just interested in CS or CT, right? All in steady state. So let us assume GS is something like some constant over Ts plus 1. So this is called as transfer function in time constant form, and is little useful to do in frequency domain analysis, right? That will actually be obvious when we do things like Nyquist or Bode plot. So I just first write down the sinusoidal transfer function for obvious reasons. So this will be j omega is equals to k by j t omega. I am just replacing s is equals to j omega everywhere, here as well as here. Okay, so let us assume that the input is just say a sinusoidal transfer function a sine omega t. So what is the entire analysis here tells you is that output, or the steady state output, which I call as CSST, is simply computed by magnitude of gj omega. What is the magnitude here? Well, that is straightforward to compute. It is k by square root 1 plus omega square t square. Similarly, its angle is tan inverse t omega. So this is just a complex number, and we know how to compute those angles. So CSST is the A, which is the multiply of magnitude of input multiplied with magnitude of gj omega. What is the magnitude of gj omega we got from here? Then sine omega t minus phi. This phi is phase shift, which is the angle of transfer function again. So this is actually straightforward now, right? So just look at G, compute its magnitude, compute its angle, and I can easily see what is my output signal. So So I do each time. I really wouldn't need to compute the inverse Laplace transform and then do all that, substituting s is equals to minus j omega plus j omega, nothing. Now magnitudes change. Magnitude just change with the magnitude of g j omega. How does the phase change? Phase just change with the angle of g j omega. So the reason of doing this, the entire previous steps was to just to get the expression in reasonably straightforward manner. Okay. For single loop system, well, we just have transfer function gs by 1 plus gs hs, and then I'm interested in sinusoidal transfer function. So I just substitute s is equals to j omega, and then I can just compute the magnitude and the angle. Magnitude will be magnitude of numerator divided by magnitude of denominator. Similarly, with the angle would be angle of numerator, that is angle of j omega minus angle of denominator. So things get little easier to compute, right? So this has become just an addition or multiplication or addition or subtraction. Okay. So the idea is to check how the magnitude change with the change in omega. Is there some strange thing happening over here which might give you some information? Similarly, what happened to the angle as the frequency is increased from say 0 to infinity, right? So we have all kind of frequency signals available, right? So there are few terms there which we will slowly derive. One is called as resonant peak. It is in some way, you can say, well, this is not directly related to, but you could, when I was just doing this time response, you know, as time was going from 0 to infinity, I defined what was or what time did it reach at its overshoot, peak overshoot, as it called as peak time. Okay, put dm by dt equals to 0. I will get actually where it reaches the peak value. I will get that time. I could even actually compute what was the peak value, something depending upon zeta, e to the power minus pi by pi zeta, some formula we had written. So similarly here, does the magnitude reaches a peak at some frequency, and this frequency, if it exists, is called resonant frequency. Okay, so if the peak value is there, that is known as resonant peak, and the system with largest resonant peak will exhibit larger resonant peak, and a system with largest resonant peak will exhibit a larger overshoot, and we will see that, right? So in general, this guy gives indication of relative stability of closed loop system. We will just keep in mind for the future. There will also be there will also be corresponding to resonant peak, the resonant frequency, the frequency at which output will become maximum. So this guy becomes maximum at certain frequency, and that frequency is called as omega r, resonant frequency. Earlier we had defined it as MP, TP, and time, where actually I reached the peak overshoot, then something called as bandwidth, which I think is the term which we use very often, but formally it means bandwidth is a frequency at which the magnitude dropped to 70.7% of its original value, or we can say zero frequency value. So this scaling we will define little later. Okay, so this is how typical response would look like depending upon omega r. So this is on the horizontal axis. So I have increasing frequency. This is on, I will also tell you why we use this log scale. Some books will also give you this in normalized frequency form, where u is equals to omega by omega n, and this is the plot as u goes from 0 to infinity. So that we will see that little later, right? So typically I will also tell you why this is 1 and u is equals to 0 or omega is equals to 0. I start this way and I would reach a peak value and then I go down this peak mr as defined earlier. We call this resonant peak and the frequency at which it occurs is resonant frequency. Now you see this starts from 1 and then goes up and then fall off to a certain value, and then this what I called as a cutoff rate. Okay, bandwidth, right? So the frequency from the point 0 when omega is 0 till this is called bandwidth. Till here it is called bandwidth, because for other frequency you can see my signal get attenuated. Why I say this? Because again I have an input signal some a sine omega t. Here I have gs. If I just draw it, I have a system whose transfer function is gs. I will have a output ct. What is the a times magnitude? After this you see that actual signal is getting attenuated too fast after this point, bandwidth point, with change in frequency. So you see that actual signal is getting attenuated too fast. Okay. So until this I can get some good output. After this I may not really be interested because my signal just become very small, right? Okay. So this is essentially what I called as cutoff frequency, which is where the magnitude is 1 by under root times of its peak value. This is not really the maximum value but 0 frequency value. I will just change. So this is the cutoff rate, this is the cutoff point. Okay. So cutoff rate is the rate of change of slope at cutoff frequency, right? The slope of this line, this line, the slope of this line is my cutoff rate. Start with typical configuration of closed loop, and I have a certain reference signal here like RT, RS, then I have transfer function GS, then unity feedbacks, and I have a certain output CS, plus and minus and so on. So loop and closed loop transfer function, this is open loop and this is closed loop transfer function, which we have even derived when we were doing second order system, was this guy. If I just substitute S is equals to j omega to get sinusoidal transfer function, this is how it's look like. Let's see what information does this guy give us. So you may even avoid this, but now let me define a quantity u is equals to omega by omega n, which is normalized frequency. Okay, so I can just write this guy in terms of u because this will just make computation very easy. So I just converted into u. So how does the magnitude of m looks like? So this is what I am interested in, calculating the magnitude and the phase. The magnitude will decide how my original signal will get transformed, what will be the frequency of result the amplitude of resultant signal. So in terms of this guy, the real part and imaginary part, the magnitude of m j omega is 1 by under root square root 1 minus s square plus whole square plus 2 zeta u whole square. Similarly, the angle for m, or even there is a closed loop. So, angle which I called as phi is tan inverse 2 zeta u by under root 1 minus u square. Okay. Again, u is a normalized frequency which is omega by omega n. Omega n is my natural frequency of the system. So, let us take my reference earlier. It was unit step in time domain. So, let us keep the unity here. So, r is 1 sin omega t. So, how this guy will look like? We have derived that this is the magnitude of input, then magnitude of transfer function, then sin omega t minus phi, which is the angle of transfer function. Now, let us see what happened when we change the frequency. I do not really want to do all the values from 0 to infinity, but just look at some typical value. First is when u is equals to 0, that m, if I put u is equals to 0, this term will be 1, this will be 0, and my magnitude will be 1. Okay. What is phi when u is equals to 0? So, if this is 0, this is 0, this is 0 by 1, and that is phi is equals to 0, right? When the input frequency is 0, well, the output is just, is just same thing as your input, nothing comes out. What just comes out is 1 dot sin omega t in this case, when my input frequency is 0. Now, second is when u is equals to 1, which means omega is equals to omega n, the natural frequency of the system. What happened to m? If u is equals to 1, this term will be 0. So, I left with this square will get cancelled with square root. So, I left with 1 by 2 zeta. U is 1. So, I left with 1 by 2 zeta. That is the magnitude. What will be the phi value? If this is 1, so this term will be 0. So, 1 by 0 means infinity, and phi is minus pi by 2, okay, with a negative sign. Third is very large value of frequency. U is infinite. The magnitude will go, if this is infinite, this is infinite, this will be 1 by infinite. So, magnitude is 0. What happened to phi? U becomes very large. So, the phi becomes minus pi, right? So, I know well m starts from certain value of 1. This was when my frequency was 0. Then u is equals to 1, omega equals to omega, and natural frequency I have some another value. As u goes to infinite, my magnitude goes to 0 at minus pi. So, then we ask ourselves a question based on all these three values, u is equals to 0, 1 and infinite. When does m have its peak, if at all it's have? So, what I do, what is changing here? Omega is changing, so the frequency is changing. So, I just look at dm by du to get the peak. This is just to do the computation. So, I just keep ur is equals to 1 minus 2 zeta square, or equivalently omega r equals to omega n 1 minus 2 zeta square. Okay. So, by substituting them in m and phi, what do I get? Mr is my resonant peak value, okay, and phi r is this if I put the value of ur. So, what do we observe from here? Let us see what happened when zeta is between these values, right. So, you see from this expression, zeta is equals to 1 by root 2. I see that this goes to 0, right. So, I put an equality here, right. So, 0 zeta less than or equals to 1 by under root 2. Resonant frequency will be less than my natural frequency. MP for these values. So look at zeta between 0 and 1 by root 2. What are the resonant peak? Resonant peak by formula is 1 by 2 zeta, because zeta is greater than 0. Therefore, I am not looking at the value of 1. I am also not looking at the value of very large frequency. So this is the thing. Therefore, all these guys, the peak, the resonant peak will always be greater than 1. Second case is when zeta is greater than 1 by under root 2. I will ask myself, well, dm by du is equals to 0 for any of these. So it turned out that zeta greater than 1 by root 2, which means this number doesn't exist. So there is no UR and omega r for which dm by du is equals to 0, or its peak value will only be when u is equals to 0. So let's try to just plot these two things. So I'm just plotting here. Over u with m. Okay, so when u is equals to 0, m is 1. So if I look at these things, I get a plot which look like this. Whereas for the first case, 0 less than zeta less than or equals to 1 by root 2, and for other, when zeta is greater than, it will be something like this, right? So that is for zeta greater than 1 by root 2. So there will be no peak. Okay, so now all the bandwidth and all I can define. So this is 1, this is my 1, and so on, right? So this is the explanation to why we actually get that picture which we have seen earlier for explaining cutoff and resonant peak and all. Okay, so as m decreases monotonously, as u increases, in this case m decreases monotonously as u increases, then you see that, just look at this mr. What is this mr? Well, this mr again depends upon zeta. So resonant frequency was mr has some direct relationship with damping factor. Similarly, omega r equals to omega m tell me about natural frequency of the system given at a particular value of damping given at zeta is equals to 0.1. So omega r has something to do with omega n. So if you remember, these were essentially the two things, zeta and omega n, defining all the time domain specification, right? So therefore there is nice correlation between what was observed in the time domain and what is now observed in frequency domain. One more observation is that I will just write down here, control system are low pass filter. You see right here. So when u is equals to 0, m equals to 1 for all the value of all the time, right? So you see, well, if zeta is less, it actually allows this guy. Okay, so zeta is greater than 1 by root 2, then it still allows some low frequency to pass. Okay, so all control system, most of them are usually low pass filter. Because of this, then we observe also from last slide. So we will see little more about bandwidth. So what is bandwidth? So this is the resonant peak for the given system, resonant frequency. Now we are doing bandwidth. Okay. So M is 1 by 1 minus b square plus 2 zeta ub square. Then this actually gives me a little approximation, gives me ub is equals to 1 minus 119 zeta plus 1.85. okay. So bandwidth is also related to damping factor of the system, right? So there is lot of good relationship between system parameters. What were the system parameters when we were dealing in? What were the system parameter when we were analyzing the time domain response? It was essentially zeta and omega n, and these two guys characterize all lot of things of the system. Similarly here, give me zeta, I can find out bandwidth. Okay, give me zeta, I can find out resonant peak, I can determine resonant frequency. Okay, so just to summarize, we just look at the resonant peak, resonant frequency, bandwidth. Again equivalently we can compute this way. I will skip this computation, but this is again not really difficult to find out just by looking at the formula like. Okay, so we just introduce ourselves to the concept of frequency response. We listed out few of those advantages we just list out, but we will slowly build up explaining or justifying those advantages. We define the concept of frequency response, the sinusoidal transfer function. We also define few frequency domain specification with respect to second order system. Okay, so that's all for today's lecture. Thank you.